Beneath the quiet sea, first glimpse of a hidden shape. You begin at the edge of Yonaguni Island, where the evening light softens into a pale gold mist drifting across the surface of the East China Sea. The waves roll in with a slow, steady rhythm, each one whispering against the rocks as though repeating an old secret. You can feel the wind brushing past your face, cool and patient, carrying the scent of salt and distant storms. This is a quiet place far from the hurried breath of the modern world, a place where mysteries do not shout but murmur. Tonight you journey backward in time, not through clocks or calendars, but through the soft current of curiosity toward one of the most perplexing discoveries beneath the world's oceans. The diver's unexpected sight. You picture yourself descending with the divers who first noticed something unusual here in 1986. The sea wraps around you in a muted blue haze. As you drift downward, sunlight filters through the surface, turning the water into shifting ribbons of silver and jade. The world grows quieter, more distant, more ancient. Then through the sediment and soft-moving sands, a shape emerges. At first you think it must be a trick of shadow, a random play of the seabed. But as you hover closer, the lines sharpen, edges take form, your eyes widen behind the mask. You see a massive structure rising from the sea floor, its steps and terraces stacked with the precision of a stone temple, perfectly flat surfaces, right angles, sharp corners that seem strangely deliberate, as though shaped by intention rather than accident. You steady your breath. This was the moment when a simple dive for hammerhead sharks turned into one of archaeology's quiet but enduring enigmas. The Yonaguni Monument, a submerged formation so vast and so geometric that even today, nearly 40 years after its discovery, no one can say with certainty what, if anything, it truly is. The unreal geometry of the deep. You drift over the first broad terrace, its surface smooth as a table, then downward toward another platform, equally even. The steps between them measure several meters each, too large for ordinary use, too uniform for randomness. You trace your fingers along a long, straight cut in the stone and feel how crisp the edge is, almost like the corner of a carefully hewn block. How could something this geometric rest in silence beneath the waves? You hover above what many divers describe as a grand staircase, rising almost 10 meters toward a central plateau. Even in the dim underwater light, the structure feels ceremonial, as if part of a forgotten stage or an ancient fortress swallowed by the sea. But nothing here carries markers of confirmed human life, no pottery, no tools, no carvings that unquestionably reveal a human hand. Still, you cannot shake the impression that this place was once touched by purpose. As the currents shift, sand drifts across long channels that look almost like roads. Massive stone faces appear and fade in the dimness. Pillar-like slabs stand in places where logic says natural erosion should be softer, less structured, less architectural. You hover there, suspended in water, and wonder, riding the gentle rise and fall of the tide. Science, stone, and story. Back on the shore, you sit on a rock, warmed by the late afternoon sun, considering the theories that ripple around the monument. Geologists offer the first explanation. This region belongs to the Ryukyu limestone formation, a type of stone known to break along horizontal and vertical planes. Natural fractures, they say, can form terraces, steps, and right angles, especially when shaped by wave erosion and tectonic stress over thousands of years. You tilt your head, imagining the slow, patient work of nature, rain, wind, earthquakes, tides all carving geometry into stone. Other scholars add more nuanced interpretations. The layers of sedimentary rock could weather into block-like segments. Earthquakes common to the region might have cracked the stone in geometric patterns. The appearance of walls and platforms might be illusions created by human expectation, the brain naturally seeking familiar shapes. And yet, there are alternative voices, careful, scholarly, but curious. Some researchers, including the marine geologist who popularized the site, have suggested that even if much of the monument is natural, certain areas show subtle signs of alteration, possible stairways, possible platforms, even possible carvings. No definitive tool marks, no inscriptions, no artifacts, but possibilities. You breathe slowly, letting these hypotheses settle like sediment over the mind. You recall that local legends speak of ancient lands swallowed by the sea, myths of a powerful kingdom lost beyond the horizon. Such stories exist in many places, echoes of real or imagined catastrophes. Yet here, with this monument beneath your feet, the legends feel less like fantasy and more like a faint memory whispered by stone. No final answer. Beneath the waves. As night falls, you walk along the shoreline where the waves meet the rocks with a soft hiss. Beyond the black surface lies the monument resting in its timeless slumber. You reflect on the decades of study, countless dives, careful mapping, geological analysis, media speculation, scholarly debate. And through all of it, the central question remains untouched. Is the Yonaguni Monument natural human-made, or something in between? No definitive answer has been reached. The evidence leans toward nature, yet even the most confident geologists leave small margins of uncertainty. The structure is simply too large, too cleanly shaped, too suggestive of lost architecture to dismiss entirely. It remains quiet, mysterious, undecided. The soft glow of possibility. You sit and listen to the tide. The sea repeats its slow rhythm like the breath of an ancient world. In this moment, you allow yourself to wonder. If this formation is natural, why does it echo the architecture of civilizations that rose thousands of years later? If it is partly shaped by humans who stood here so long ago, before recorded history, before Japan's earliest known cultures chiseling steps that would one day descend into the ocean, or could this be a fragment of something older still? A shard of knowledge, a memory of a people erased by time or rising seas. You breathe deeply, slowly. The mystery remains. The sea keeps its secrets. And you drift with them gently like a leaf carried along a quiet current into the night. A soft transition forms like a dim lantern glowing deeper in the water. The stone steps that shouldn't exist. The night drifts slowly into morning as you find yourself once again on the quiet shores of Yonaguni Island. The first light of dawn blooms softly across the horizon, gentle streaks of peach and pale lavender stretching like brushstrokes over the East China Sea. The waves roll in cool and rhythmic, smoothing the sand as if preparing the island for another day of contemplation. You breathe with the tide, feeling the calm weight of air settle around you. Ahead, the sea glimmers, faintly whispering of the world hidden beneath its surface, the world of terraces and angles that defy natural expectation. And so, with a slow inhale, you descend once more into the blue, a staircase carved by something unknown. You slip beneath the water, letting the silence wrap around you like ancient silk. The deeper you go, the more the sunlight diffuses, softening into pale curtains that sway gently with the currents. The seafloor appears, and with it the unmistakable outline of immense steps. They rise in broad platforms wide enough for crowds tall enough to challenge ancient engineering. The edges are sharp, clean, almost ideal in their geometry. Each step spans several meters, forming a grand staircase that leads up toward a massive central terrace. You drift above it, feeling the quiet awe that so many divers have described. These are no small incidental formations. They stretch outward in consistent patterns, giving the impression of a structure meant to be climbed, meant to be seen. And yet no one knows who might have climbed them. No one knows if anyone ever did. Terraces, too perfect for coincidence. You swim carefully along the steps, letting your hand brush gently across the stone. The limestone is cool beneath your fingers, worn smooth by centuries of waves. But the shape, the form feels intentional, as though nature decided to practice architecture in the deep. You notice how the steps align almost perfectly at right angles, how the corners fold into neat, consistent edges, how the platforms widen and narrow with a rhythm that feels designed even if by accident. Some divers describe the experience as unsettling, others describe it as breathtaking. But for you it is simply mysterious, a quiet ancient symmetry resting in the deep. You pause near a place where the steps curve slightly, forming what looks like a gentle corner. Shadows settle beneath the overhang, giving the impression of an entrance or threshold. It feels like approaching the steps of a forgotten shrine, a place once touched by feet, now visited only by drifting fish and wandering current. The sea hums lightly against the stone, as though reciting a story in a language lost long ago. Natural fracture or ancient engineering. Back on land, you sit beneath an old wind-sculpted tree overlooking the waves as you reflect on the theories surrounding the steps. Geologists emphasize a natural explanation. This region's stone fractures along orthogonal joint patterns, meaning vertical and horizontal splits, form naturally in the bedrock. Over time, tectonic uplift could force these fractured layers upward. Then relentless waves carve away softer sections, producing terraces and step-like formations. From this perspective, the staircase is not a staircase at all, only a coincidence of geology, erosion, and time. You imagine the slow movement of plates deep beneath the island, the grinding of stone, the push and pull of the Earth's crust shaping the coastline. And you see how, in enough time, even nature can mimic intention. But there is another perspective. Some scholars argue that elements of the formation suggest modification by human hands, not construction from individual blocks, but the shaping of natural stone like ancient civilizations have often done on exposed cliffs or large bedrock surfaces. Could early inhabitants of the Ryukyu region, long before recorded history, have carved platforms for ritual use? Could they have shaped terraces for gatherings, ceremonies, or astronomical purposes? No tools have been found, no carvings with known meaning, no datable cultural layer lies preserved on the stone. Yet the stair-like forms persist in their suggestion of human involvement. Others look to global archaeological parallels, step pyramids of Mesoamerica, terraced temples in Southeast Asia, megalithic complexes in Europe, and wonder whether such structural symmetry might echo something universal in human design, even if separated by oceans and millennia. And on the fringe edges of speculation, some imagine older civilizations long forgotten, shaping the steps before rising seas swallowed their world. You sit quietly with these thoughts, letting the wind rustle through the grasses beside you. No proof of human construction. The truth remains elusive. Geological studies largely favor natural formation. The rock fractures. The angles match predictable break patterns. The steps resemble features found in other coastal regions shaped by wave erosion. But the case is not entirely closed. No definitive geological model explains every straight cut, every clean edge, every platform arranged in symmetrical tiers. And so scholars remain respectful yet cautious, acknowledging nature's capabilities while leaving room for deeper inquiry. You return to the water's edge and look out across the sea. Beneath that shimmering surface lies a staircase that shouldn't be as perfect as it is. Yet it is there, silent, immense, and unanswered. The soft pull of lost time. As evening settles, warm twilight settles across the beach. The sky deepens into muted gold, then copper, then soft blue-gray, as the sun sinks below the horizon. You listen to the slow pulse of waves, the steady hush that has shaped these shores for thousands of years. Perhaps the steps are nature's handiwork alone, a reminder that the earth can carve geometry as elegantly as any human craftsman. Or perhaps they are remnants of a civilization erased by rising seas and shifting continents. Ancient people may have climbed these terraces long before Japan's earliest known cultural layers emerged. Or perhaps the truth lies somewhere between world's natural formations, later adapted shape gently for purposes we can no longer guess. You breathe deeply, feeling the mystery settle into your thoughts like gentle mist. The sea holds many stories. Some are written in stone, some are whispered only in currents. And some, like the Yonaguni steps, remain suspended between possibility and silence. Passageways into silence corridors of uncertain origin. Morning on Yonaguni arrives softly with a gentle veil of fog spreading over the coastline like a pale gray shawl. The ocean still half-dreaming glimmers with a muted silver light. You stand at the edge of the shore, listening to the hush of waves rolling in and out, an ancient, patient rhythm. You breathe with it. And beneath that calm surface lies another mystery, the narrow passageways, sharp-edged channels, and right-angled corridors that weave through the submerged monument like hallways in a forgotten structure. You step toward the water, feeling the cool mist brush against your skin, and once again you descend into the deep. Entering the submerged corridors. As you drift downward, the blue grows darker and the world becomes quieter. Only the faint hum of distant currents remains. A school of fish passes by in a slow, shimmering arc. The monument rises beneath you, vast and silent. Then you see them. Long, straight passageways cut between towering blocks of stone, narrow channels that stretch with unwavering alignment. The water flows through these spaces with gentle persistence, as though the sea itself is slowly exploring a labyrinth. You hover at the mouth of one such corridor. Its walls stand nearly vertical, separated by a gap so straight and consistent that you cannot help but feel as though you are about to walk into the interior of a submerged building. The corridor extends into shadow straight and unwavering. You enter. Light from above fades into dim gradients as you glide deeper. The walls remain smooth, geometric, and eerily uniform. In one section, the floor drops into a lower tier, forming what looks like a trench, carved cleanly as though for drainage or ritual movement. In another, the ceiling opens slightly, forming a square-like shaft where sunlight drips through like a pale lantern. It feels like wandering into the blueprint of an ancient structure, yet no doorways exist, no carvings, no purposeful symbols, only stone, only silence. Geometry, hidden beneath waves. You pause in one chamber-like space where two corridors intersect at a perfect right angle. The corners are crisp, the alignment unmistakable. Shapes repeat with such precision that your mind instinctively seeks meaning in their arrangement. You find yourself imagining rooms, gathering spaces, ritual pathways, places where footsteps once echoed, if indeed footsteps ever touched these stones. But the underwater world offers no answers. The current whispers softly through the corridor, tugging gently at your fins. Your flashlight glides along the wall, tracing straight fractures that resemble cut lines. Small fish dart in and out of the crevices, moving as effortlessly as thoughts drifting through the mind. These formations evoke something deeply human. Corridors are not accidental shapes we associate with untouched geology. They imply movement, purpose, direction. Yet here they exist without any accompanying evidence of habitation. You drift upward through a narrow vertical gap, almost like a stairwell, and emerge into another open space where light spreads in shimmering patterns across the stone. The place feels like a submerged temple, but only in feeling, not in proof. Nature's architecture or human design. Later, sitting beneath the shelter of a rocky outcrop on the island, you reflect on the explanations scholars have offered. Geological theory, natural jointing, and fracture systems. Geologists argue that Yonaguni's limestone is prone to tectonic splitting, forming orthogonal cracks. When these cracks intersect, they can create passageway-like formations. Combined with wave action and the pressure of currents, these natural joints can deepen into what appear to be corridors. They also point out that the region is tectonically active. Earthquakes regularly reshape the seafloor. Vertical stress fractures could easily produce the channel-like spaces divers interpret as hallways. You imagine the slow grinding of tectonic plates carving geometry into stone over millions of years. Modified natural theory, human shaping of natural features. Some researchers suggest a blending of natural and human-made influences. Perhaps early inhabitants of the region found naturally occurring terraces and corridors and shaped them further for ritual or practical purposes. In many ancient cultures, people carved minimally into natural stone, enhancing what nature already provided. Could this be such a case, subtle shaping, without major construction? No tools have been recovered. No definitive tool marks identified. No cultural layer remains. Yet the argument persists because the geometry feels too suggestive to ignore. Alternative interpretation. A lost structure from a forgotten era. A small group of researchers, more speculative but still thoughtful, propose that the entire corridor system may belong to a vanished settlement inundated by rising seas after the last ice age. These theorists look to global sea level changes that submerged coastal landscapes around 10,000 years ago. Could this complex once have been above water? Could its corridors have framed ancient walkways, rooms, meeting spaces? There is no direct evidence, but also nothing that conclusively rules out the possibility. You sit with that uncertainty. It is spacious. It is quiet. Still, no definitive explanation. Despite decades of exploration, mapping, and debate, no solid consensus has been reached. Geological explanations remain the leading interpretation, grounded in observable patterns of jointing and erosion. Yet, the corridors persist in their uncanny precision. The right angles continue to challenge dismissive views. The passageways still give the unmistakable impression of intention, and so the monument occupies a strange middle ground, too geometric to be quickly dismissed as random, yet lacking the evidence required to classify it as human-made. The mystery rests there suspended like silt in water, the whisper of lost memory. As evening spreads across the island once more, you listen to the wind moving softly through tall grasses. The ocean glows under the moonlight, silver and serene. You imagine the corridors below, silent in the dark water, unchanged, unbothered, patiently holding their secrets. Perhaps they are only nature's geometry, an ancient pattern shaped by forces older than humanity. Or perhaps they once echoed with the movements of a forgotten people, their intentions washed away by the rising sea. Or perhaps the truth lives somewhere between nature sculpted the stone and ancient hands refined it, merging entirely into a form we can no longer decipher. You breathe slowly, feeling the weight of ages settle softly around you. Mysteries like this one are not puzzles to be solved in a single lifetime. They are gentle reminders of how much remains beyond our reach, just out of view beneath the quiet sea. The Terraced Giant, a structure larger than temples. Dawn returns to Yonaguni Island with a soft, pearly glow that spreads across the sky like brushed silk. The low clouds gather along the horizon, tinted rose and lavender by the rising sun. The air is cool, almost meditative, carrying the faint scent of salt and seaweed. The wind moves slowly, as if careful not to disturb the quiet sanctity of the morning. You stand once more on the rocky coastline, listening to the ocean breathe. Each wave folds over itself with a gentle hush. Somewhere in the depths below lies the largest and most imposing part of the Yonaguni Monument, a terraced formation so massive and so eerily structured that even the most seasoned scientists pause when confronting its scale. Today, you descend to meet the giant. Encounter with the monument's great platform. The water envelops you with its familiar coolness. As you sink beneath the surface, the sunlight fractures into shimmering ribbons that dance over your skin. The seafloor slowly takes shape, and then suddenly there it is. A massive, sprawling complex of terraces rising from the depths like the exposed bones of an ancient city. The formation is larger than a football field. Its broad steps ascend layer by layer, each platform arranged with startling symmetry. Some sections stretch 50 meters across, creating what looks at first glance like an immense submerged ziggurat. You float above it, dwarfed by its presence. It feels less like a geological accident and more like something with intention, an edifice meant to be approached, climbed, perhaps revered. But the truth remains unknown. You drop gently toward the lowest terrace, resting your hand on stone worn by centuries of tides. The surface is smooth in places, jagged in others as though shaped by both time and something more deliberate. The deeper you drift, the more you feel the quiet gravity of this formation, not as a ruin, but as a question. A monument too grand for coincidence. From a distance, the monument seems like a single massive block, but as you navigate its levels, its complexity reveals itself. Terraces arranged with even spacing, sheer walls rising at vertical angles, flat sprawling platforms that seem almost too enormous to be purely natural. You swim slowly along the face of one wall. It stretches upward like the side of an ancient fortress, its planes forming near-perfect vertical lines. Fish weave in and out of the crevices, their scales catching the dim light like flickers of silver. Above you, the terraces resemble steps leading up the slope of a gigantic stone pyramid. They fold inward with a rhythm that feels almost architectural, like an ancient amphitheater carved into the ocean floor. Even seasoned divers have admitted that this particular formation feels too perfect, too grand, too arranged. You pause at a long, flat expanse known informally as the main terrace. It is vast, far larger than any natural platform you have seen in underwater geology. You imagine people gathering here, standing in rows, participating in some ancient ritual, though such imagery is only conjecture. Still, the stone holds an aura of purpose, even if that purpose has long dissolved into the tide. Earth's hand, or humanity's touch. Later that day you sit on a high cliff overlooking the water. The sea below seems calm, but you know the giant rests just beneath its shifting surface. You reflect on the theories scholars have debated for decades: geological explanation, tectonic uplift, and marine erosion. Many geologists attribute the terraces to natural processes. The stone here, Miocene sandstone and mudstone, breaks into layers that can create large flat steps through fracture and erosion. Wave action, especially along faulted coastlines, can carve terraces that extend for impressive distances. To the geological eye, the monument's scale is not impossible. Stacked sedimentary layers can, under the right conditions, produce massive stair-like formations. Tectonic uplift can expose these layers at angles that mimic architecture. Wave erosion can sculpt vertical walls with surprisingly neat edges. Nature, it seems, can produce giants. Modified natural hypothesis. Human alteration of a natural base. Some archaeologists propose a more nuanced idea: the giant may indeed be natural in its foundation, but ancient people might have shaped or flattened certain surfaces for use. They argue that flat terraces could have been ideal for gatherings. Sloped platforms might have served as lookouts. Wide open spaces might have been intentionally cleared. Rough cuts could have been enhanced by human tools. This theory does not require a lost civilization, only early coastal communities using natural features as sacred or ceremonial spaces. But the absence of artifacts complicates the argument. Alternative theories: the work of a lost coastal culture. A small number of researchers suggest a more dramatic possibility. The monument could be the eroded remains of a coastal settlement that existed before the last major sea level rise, perhaps more than 10,000 years ago. They point to global patterns: submerged structures in India's Gulf of Combat, ancient coastal ruins in the Mediterranean, the rapid inundation of Doggerland in northern Europe. Could Yonaguni belong to a forgotten chapter of human history, erased when the seas rose? There is no consensus, but the monument's scale leaves room for speculation. Still, no definitive answer for the giant. Despite extensive surveys, no conclusive evidence points decisively toward human construction. No artifacts have been found embedded in the structure. No clear, universally accepted signs of tool use exist. Geological explanations remain highly compelling, and yet, the terraces continue to provoke doubt. Their arrangement feels rhythmic, intentional, even grand. The monument's sheer size challenges the simplest interpretations. Scholars remain respectfully divided. The truth sleeps beneath the sea, a quiet giant of forgotten time. As the sun sets, a gentle amber glow spreads across Yonaguni. The tide pulls back slowly, revealing dark stones that gleam like wet obsidian. You sit on a quiet rock, listening to the soft rumble of distant waves. You imagine the giant beneath you patiently waiting in the darkness. Perhaps it is nature's ultimate sculpture, an ancient masterpiece carved by tectonics and waves. Perhaps it is a remnant of a forgotten coastal culture, its purpose long lost. Or perhaps it stands at a crossroads between the two, a natural foundation shaped gently by human hands in an age beyond memory. You breathe deeply into the gathering twilight. Some mysteries are not meant to be solved. Some exist to remind you how young humanity is, how old the earth is, and how much remains hidden beneath the quiet sea. Faces in the Deep, the controversial human head formation. The evening settles softly over Yonaguni Island, draping the shore in muted amber light. A pale mist rises from the sea, drifting like breath across the surface of the water. The wind is slow and warm, carrying with it the faint scent of coral and distant rain. The waves break quietly along the rocks, steady, rhythmic, ancient. Tonight you return to the deep, not to explore terraces or corridors, but to visit one of the most debated and haunting features of the entire monument, a stone formation that some claim resembles a human face gazing upward through layers of shifting blue. You breathe calmly as you let the ocean cradle you once again. The emergence of a face. You descend into the water where sunlight dims into soft broken rays. The sea envelops you in its cool embrace, and the slow pulse of currents carries you deeper into the realm where shadows drift like dreams. As you approach a large outcropping on the flank of the monument, something faint begins to take shape. At first you see only rough stone, a massive vertical slab worn by centuries of waves. But as you angle your body and drift sideways, the lines sharpen, curved shadows align, features seem to emerge from the rock. Two indentations resemble eyes set beneath a shelf that forms something like a brow. A long sloping ridge could be the suggestion of a nose. Below an angular ledge hints at a chin or jawline. Your breath stills. You are staring at what many divers call the Yonaguni face, a formation that appears startlingly anthropomorphic, as though a colossal visage lies frozen beneath the sea. You hover there for a long moment, letting the uncanny symmetry settle into your thoughts. Whether it is natural or intentional remains a debate, but its presence is undeniable. The illusion of recognition. The human mind is finely tuned to recognize faces even in clouds, cliffs, shadows, or driftwood. It is an instinct so deep that psychologists call it pareidolia, the tendency to see pattern in randomness. But the face at Yonaguni feels stronger than a fleeting illusion. The eyes, though uneven, sit at believable points within the head. The brow ridge casts a shadow that moves naturally with the angle of the sun. The nose-like protrusion looks almost carved by purpose. You drift lower, observing the deep groove along the cheek that could be erosion, or could be something more deliberate. There is no smile, no expression, only a stony solemnity that gives the impression of a sentinel watching over the monument's terraces. In the shifting underwater light, the face appears to breathe. In darker moments, it almost seems alive. Divers have described this formation as haunting, awe-inspiring, eerily human, or simply too precise to ignore. Yet the ocean remains silent. It does not explain itself. You drift around the formation trying to see it from another angle. From the side, the illusion fades. The features blur into random cuts and natural fractures. But when you return to the frontal view, the likeness returns. The sea itself seems to guide your perspective, from psychology to geology to ancient hands. Later you sit on the sandy shore listening to soft surf while contemplating the many interpretations scholars and divers have offered. Psychological theory, pareidolia. From a cognitive perspective, the face may be nothing more than a mental projection. Humans are wired to detect patterns, especially faces in ambiguous shapes. It is an evolutionary advantage rooted in our earliest need for survival. This explanation suggests the eyes are natural hollows, the nose is a random protrusion, the mouth is an eroded ledge, the symmetry is coincidence. You reflect on how the brain seeks familiarity even in the unfamiliar. Geological theory, natural weathering of limestone. Geologists point to the island's composition, sandstone and mudstone, both prone to fracturing along straight plains. Weathering wave action and tectonic shifts could easily produce indentations that mimic facial features. They argue that the grooves align with natural fracture lines. The face is inconsistent from other angles. Similar formations exist along other rocky coastlines. Nature, they insist, can sculpt recognizable shapes without human involvement. Modified natural theory, subtle carving of natural rock. Some researchers propose that while the base may be natural, ancient peoples could have lightly carved or enhanced the stone, giving it a more anthropomorphic appearance. Evidence is speculative. No tools have been found. No carvings are definitively human. Erosion could obscure subtle modifications, but the possibility remains because the resemblance is striking enough to invite the question. Symbolic interpretation, a guardian or marker. A more symbolic theory suggests that if the monument or part of it was shaped by humans, the face could represent a territorial marker, a guardian watching the sea, a spiritual effigy, or a signpost for navigators. Ancient coastal cultures across the world carved faces into cliffs, rocks, and mountainsides. Could Yonaguni share this tradition? If it does, no surviving legend confirms it. Lost civilization theory, remnant of a sunken culture. At the far end of speculation, some propose that the face belongs to a civilization that existed before rising seas engulfed the coastline thousands of years ago. In this interpretation, it may have served as a deity, a king, a ceremonial guardian, or a symbolic representation of ancestors. But without artifacts, the theory remains delicate and unproven. No clear consensus. Despite extensive research, no theory has gained universal acceptance. The face is too ambiguous for archaeologists to claim, too precise for some divers to dismiss, too inconsistent for geologists to consider anything but natural, and too evocative for the human imagination to ignore. It remains a delicate balance, part illusion, part geology, part enigma. No definitive explanation exists. A silent watcher in the deep night falls gently over Yonaguni. A silver moon rises, casting soft reflections across the sea. You imagine the face beneath the waves, watching through shifting water, unchanged by time or debate. Perhaps it is a trick of light nature's accidental artistry. Perhaps it once held meaning for a culture long forgotten. Or perhaps it is something in between, a natural formation that ancient hands subtly altered, merging intention with chance until both became inseparable. The sea keeps its secrets quietly, patiently, forever. You breathe with the calm rhythm of the waves. The soft mystery of Yonaguni settles over you like a warm blanket. The mysterious road, a submerged avenue or natural fracture. A gentle gray dawn settles over Yonaguni Island as the early morning tide ebbs quietly from the rocks. The sea is calm, almost reflective, like a sheet of brushed metal stretched beneath the sky. The wind drifts lightly in from the east, carrying the faint fragrance of salt coral and distant rain. You stand at the water's edge, your feet sinking softly into the cool sand. Before you, the ocean glows with a pale silver shimmer. Somewhere out there beneath the hushed blue veil lies a formation that divers have come to call the Loop Road, a long, straight expanse of stone that seems to defy the chaos of nature. Today you descend once more to walk along a road that may or may not lead to the origins of this perplexing monument. The long, straight path beneath the sea. The water greets you with its signature cool embrace. As you sink deeper, the ambient noise of the world softens into a low, soothing hum. Light fractures above you in pale beams shimmering across the seafloor. Then you see it, a long, uninterrupted stretch of flat stone extending far across the submerged landscape. 6 meters wide in some places, narrower in others, but always straight, unwavering, without the gentle curves or uneven dips that underwater formations typically show. It looks like a path, a walkway, a place for feet to tread and travelers to pass. The sides of the road are edged by low linear fractures that resemble borders almost like curbs. You glide along it, feeling the uncanny sensation of following an ancient avenue laid out in an era you cannot quite imagine. The surface is smooth in long sections, as though worn down by ages of contact, yet the sea has been the only visitor for most of its existence. The deeper you drift, the more the road stretches onward like a quiet thread through the monument's most puzzling landscape. A path that shouldn't be there. As you follow the stone pathway, the uncanny awareness grows. The lines are too straight, the edges too regular, the continuity too persistent across the seabed. You let your fingers brush gently across the surface. The limestone feels cool and faintly textured, shaped by countless centuries of waves. But beneath that natural wear lies a stubborn uniformity, as if the stone before it slept beneath the sea served a purpose beyond geological chance. Shadows from passing fish drift across the road. The water's movement creates shifting patterns of light, making the path shimmer as if it remembers another time, a time when it might have been dry, walked, used. Your mind begins to imagine shapes, travelers on the move, priests walking to a ceremonial space, guardians patrolling the edge of a settlement. But you remind yourself imagination is not evidence. Still, the road endures. Still, its eerie straightness refuses to vanish beneath rational explanation. Even experienced geologists admit that the road's alignment is strikingly unusual. You swim the length of it feeling as though you are walking through a dream, your body suspended between ancient possibility and scientific scrutiny. The sea, as always, stays silent. Geological logic versus ancient intent. Later on the warm sand of the island shore, you sit with your legs folded beneath you as the wind brushes lightly over your shoulders. You consider the array of explanations scholars have offered for the mysterious road. 1. Geological theory, fracture planes, and tectonic slabs. Geologists point to the nature of Yonaguni stone, sedimentary layers that split cleanly, joints that run in strong straight lines, tectonic uplift that exposes long slabs at perfect angles. They argue that the road is simply a horizontal bedding plane exposed by tectonic activity and smoothed by wave erosion. Nature, they insist, is fully capable of creating long straight lines, especially in regions of layered rock. Their explanation is logical, grounded academic, and yet even some of them acknowledge that the length and consistency of the path are curious. 2. Modified natural hypothesis, human enhancement of a natural base. Other researchers suggest that ancient peoples may have found a natural slab and subtly shaped it to serve as a pathway or open plaza. In this interpretation, nature provided the block. Humans flattened certain sections. Erosion later erased the finer details. Such subtle shaping would leave few, if any, distinguishable tool marks once submerged and weathered by waves. This theory allows for human involvement without requiring a lost civilization, only a community living along the coast thousands of years ago. 3. Functional use theory, a processional path or ritual, avenue. Some suggest that if the platform was ever above water, it may have been a ceremonial walkway, an approach to a temple, a gathering route for festivals, or a boundary road of a settlement. Many ancient cultures create linear paths to guide movement rituals or processions. Could Yonaguni's road be one such example? No artifacts support this, yet the form stubbornly holds the shape of purpose. 4. Lost civilization, theory, remnant of a submerged culture. Among the more speculative theories is the idea that the loop road is a remnant of a civilization wiped out during dramatic sea level rises following the last ice age. Proponents note, Japan's coastline was vastly different 10,000 years ago. The sea rose rapidly around the world. Ancient peoples living near the coast could have built structures now long submerged. This theory carries allure, but no definitive evidence has emerged to validate it. Still, the road seems to invite the thought. No clear resolution for the loop road. Years of diving mapping and geological analysis have brought scholars no closer to a definitive answer. The road may be natural, may be modified, may be a relic, may be a coincidence. Each possibility hangs in delicate equilibrium, like grains of sand suspended in a tranquil current. No theory fully explains why the road remains so consistently straight, so unusually smooth, so suggestively shaped. The sea holds its silence, the stone keeps its secrets, and the debates continue quietly, patiently, without resolution. A path through time's uncertainty. As the sky darkens into evening, a warm breeze moves across the island, rippling through tall grasses. You watch the ocean glow with the reflection of a rising moon. Somewhere beneath that luminous surface lies the quiet stone road, stretching into obscurity, connecting nothing to nothing. Or perhaps connecting you to the past. You imagine ancient hands possibly flattening stone. You imagine the earth sculpting plains with equal finesse. You imagine a civilization walking on land that is now a dream beneath water. No answer emerges, only possibility. You breathe with the sea's rhythm, feeling the gentle calm of the unknown settle around you. Mystery does not demand belief. It merely invites curiosity. Echoes of lost civilizations and the ocean's memory. The evening comes to Yonaguni with silver mist and the soft hush of the Kuroshio current sliding past the island like a dark satin ribbon. You stand at the water's edge, listening as the tide exhales against the rocks. The world feels older here, older than the coral, older than the winds that carry salt through the pines, older than the lantern light on distant fishing boats that flicker like small, patient stars. Beneath the sea lies geometry. Around the sea drifts story. Tonight you follow the second current, the one that flows through language, legend, and memory toward a name whispered in many books and on many boats, Mu, the story that rises with the tide. You begin not underwater, but on a quiet veranda where an old diver shares tea and recollection. He speaks slowly the way islanders speak when the sea has taught them patience. He tells you that long before tourists asked about steps and corridors, fishermen told each other older tales of lands that broke the surface where only blue lies now. Of capricious waves that sweep over stone platforms in storms, revealing impossible edges. Of nights when the moon falls perfectly into a seam of sea and horizon, as if aligning with an ancient line no one remembers. And in the reading rooms of faraway cities, in speculative histories and romantic ethnographies, the name of a lost continent cycles like a tide mu, a vanished realm somewhere in the Pacific, source of a primordial knowledge that seeded temples and myths across island chains. You do not know if mu is true. You only know that the story rises again and again like a tide that refuses to forget the shore. How the ocean remembers. You walk the beach at low tide and watch the ocean write and erase the very same line with each wave. The sea's memory is not like yours. It is not literal, not archival. It is rhythmic. It is deep time breathing. Across the Pacific and its margins, memories of sunken worlds echo in many languages. In Polynesian voyaging chants, in Micronesian star paths, in the origin stories of the Ryukyu Islands, where the culture hero couple Amamikyu and Shinarikyu raise land from the sea, the earliest gift is not a kingdom or a throne, but ground something to stand upon, to plant, to remember. You consider the late Ice Age when the ocean was far lower. Sea level scholars say rose dramatically as ice sheets melted, reshaping coasts and swallowing deltas. Coastal plains became bays. Headlands became islands. Caves where people once lit fires now hold fish and tide. What would these changes look like to those who lived through them? A shore that retreats, a field that drowns, a path that vanishes. You imagine how such change becomes legend, not a geologic curve on a graph, but a story, a home taken by water, a boundary moved by gods, a city that slipped beneath the waves because time itself changed its mind. You look out at the swell and feel it, the awe of a sea that keeps more than it shows. Between myth and geology later, as the night deepens, you sit with 3 strands of explanation resting like braided ropes in your hands, each different, each strong in its own way. 1. The geological memory. Mainstream science speaks of post-glacial sea level rise. After the last glacial maximum, the waters climb slowly at first, then during pulses redrawing the Pacific's margins. Islands emerged and diminished. Channels widened, continental shelves vanished beneath blue. If stone terraces at Yonaguni are natural, they could have formed fractured and been exposed and reburied by cycles of uplift and erosion, eventually settling where you find them now. This view is sober and measurable. It explains the erosion, the planes, the joints. It suggests that human stories of lost coastlines are exactly that, coastlines lost, remembered as continents. 2. The cultural eco-anthropologists often treat myths as memory with metaphor. In this view, Mu becomes a symbolic continent, a way for far-scattered communities to articulate ancestral dispersals and maritime skill. The Ryukyu Islands, with their own creation narratives, and the wider Austronesian world with its star lore and canoe epics, carry memories of movement over water so long and so skilled that it appears miraculous to sedentary eyes. Mu, then, may not be a place. It may be a pattern, the persistent human impulse to imagine origins across the horizon. 3. The speculative continuity. A quieter minority entertains a third possibility that some coastal societies with unexpected complexity thrived along now submerged margins, leaving few durable traces. Not continent-spanning empires, but littoral cultures, harbors, causeways, stoneworks adapted from natural platforms. In this view, Mu is not a continent, but a mosaic of shorelines later drowned by rising seas, each contributing a tile to a myth of unity. The Yonaguni Terraces, if even lightly modified by ancient hands, could belong to this littoral tapestry. None of these strands alone resolves the question. Together they form a cord strong enough to hold the mystery without breaking it. The silence between stone and story. You return to the waves and let them lap over your feet. Evidence you know must meet certain standards. Yonaguni offers geometry impressions, alignments, and possibilities, but not the artifacts that assign names, dates, and the signatures of culture. The legends offer resonance and pattern, but not coordinates. There is no carved inscription naming a monarch of Mu, no inscribed tablets preserved in submarine caves, no stratified layers of daily life sealed by sand and time. Instead, there is ambiguity, that calm, difficult space where data and dream meet, and neither conquers the other. The geological model accounts for much. The human imagination accounts for the rest. Between them stands the monument, suggestive, stubborn, and silent. Mu remains an echo, a word as fluid as water, a shape as mutable as a wave. A lantern for the unknown shore. The night grows still. The constellation of the fisherman leans over the horizon. Somewhere toward Taiwan, the Kuroshio carries warm water north, and with it the silt of other stories. Perhaps Mu is no more than the memory of coastlines forgotten by maps. Perhaps Yonaguni is only the earth's geometry, mistaken for architecture by eyes that long for kinship with the deep past. Or perhaps a word you hold gently, respectfully. Perhaps some places were indeed touched, natural platforms, trimmed, smoothed, or aligned by hands that left no pottery, no tools, only a feeling of arrangement rediscovered by divers centuries later. You remember that the ocean's first gift in island myth is not a palace, it is land. And land, when it vanishes, is not merely lost, it is grieved. Civilizations build temples to remember gods. Coasts build stories to remember themselves. So you keep a small lantern of possibility lit, not the roaring torch of certainty, but a quiet, steady flame. It flickers in sympathy with wave and wind, illuminating just enough to walk the shoreline between skepticism and wonder. You look out one last time. The sea is a dark mirror holding the sky. The monument sleeps beneath it, its terraces cradling the same questions you do. If there was a Mu, it is everywhere the coast once stood. If there was not the need to imagine, it remains a tender truth about us that we are creatures who listen for ancestors in the surf. The tide turns, the night exhales, and you drift forward gently, patiently toward the realm of earthquakes, strata, and uplift, where stone speaks in the grammar of the earth. Earthquakes, tectonics, and the sculpting of ancient seafloors. The sky above Yonaguni grows pale and muted as dawn spreads across the horizon like a soft watercolor wash. A silvery haze lingers over the waves, giving the sea a quiet, introspective mood, as though it is remembering something long buried. The wind passes lightly over the island's cliffs, carrying the deep, ancient scent of salt and stone. You listen to the slow heartbeat of the tide, each wave rolling in like a deep, measured breath. Underneath these tranquil rhythms lies a geological world that is anything but still, a world of trembling earth, shifting plates, and forces so vast and patient that they shape continents. Tonight you descend not only into the monument, but into the earth's hidden mechanics, the slow, relentless processes that may have sculpted Yonaguni long before the first stories of Mu were whispered on its shores. The underworld of tectonic forces. You slip beneath the surface, once again the water cool and enveloping. As you fall gracefully through layers of blue, you recall that these islands stand upon the Ryukyu Trench, one of the Earth's great tectonic boundaries. Here, the massive Philippine sea plate presses beneath the Eurasian plate, creating enormous tension deep below the waves. You reach the monument's edge and hover over a series of wide-stepped platforms. From this vantage, the structure looks almost too perfect, as though a monumental staircase once led upward from the seafloor into some forgotten world. But beneath its symmetry lies the story of its birth, the quiet, immeasurable power of tectonic uplift. You glide closer to the stone, tracing the long, straight fracture lines with your eyes. They run in neat, parallel patterns like the grain of ancient wood. These cracks are not random. They follow geological logic, the language of compressed stone forced upward by the shifting plates beneath it. And yet, even knowing this, their precision still surprises you. You drift down between two towering sections of the monument, the water humming gently around you. The walls rise in smooth planes on either side, so geometric, so sharply angled, that they almost resemble quarried slabs arranged by unseen engineers. But they are not arranged. They are shifted, uplifted, split-shaped by forces that moved long before humans ever cast nets into these waters. The ocean floor's architecture. You ascend slowly along the side of a huge, broad platform. As you rise, the stone reveals repeating patterns, long horizontal layers, shattered by vertical cracks. The shapes form massive rectangular blocks, some towering, some collapsed, some standing like forgotten pillars. The monument doesn't simply look made, it looks assembled, even though no assembly ever occurred. You pause near a massive step that feels like the threshold of a forgotten gate. The light above scatters through the water, illuminating the edges in shifting glimmers. The shadows deepen beneath each overhang like hidden chambers. There is beauty here. Not the beauty of human design, but the beauty of nature's geometry, grand, improbable, precise. You recall how divers have reported uncanny sensations here, feeling watched by the stone, feeling as though they are drifting through ruins, feeling the weight of ages pressing from all sides. Yet standing here, you sense something else, an ancient patience. The slow, steady work of tectonics erosion, sea level changes, and uplift forming shapes that mimic architecture purely by the world's own design. The awe lies not in proving human hands, but in realizing that the earth itself can carve zigzagging terraces and vertical halls that resemble long-lost monuments. Natural processes, complex effects. Later, sitting on the rocks as the tide sways below, you reflect on the explanations offered by geologists who have studied this region. 1. Tectonic uplift and jointing patterns. The stone here belongs to the Yaeyama group, sedimentary layers that fracture along two main axes, horizontal bedding planes and vertical joints. Under tectonic pressure, these planes split cleanly. When uplifted, the fractures create massive blocks and broad steps. To geologists, this is entirely natural. You picture the plates grinding inch by inch for centuries, the rock rising slowly, meeting waves that chip away at its edges. Over millennia, these forces compose a landscape that resembles a stepped temple. 2. Wave erosion and coastal abrasion. Powerful currents carve stone into flat surfaces and smooth plains, especially when the stone is already fractured. The Kuroshio current, warm and forceful, sweeps past Yonaguni with unusual strength. The ocean becomes both sculptor and archivist, preserving some features, erasing others. 3. Earthquake activity, reshaping seafloors. Yonaguni lies in one of the most seismically active regions of the world. Earthquakes here are frequent, sometimes dramatic. When the earth shakes beneath the monument, entire blocks can shift slightly, creating straight offsets that resemble deliberate alignment. Over centuries, these subtle movements accumulate a strange architectural cohesiveness. 4. Human influence on a natural structure. Some archaeologists propose a blended theory that the monument is primarily natural, but early humans may have flattened or emphasized certain surfaces when the formation was above water. Perhaps small platforms were shaped. Perhaps ritual areas were smoothed. Perhaps nothing more was needed for the place to become significant. This theory gives the stone its natural birth, but acknowledges the human tendency to adapt striking natural sites for ceremonial use. Nature explains much, not all. Despite the strength of geological models, they do not fully explain everything. They do not explain the long, flat avenues that appear too consistent. They do not explain the corridors that intersect at near-perfect right angles. They do not explain why some surfaces are so smooth compared to others. They do not explain why the structure's silhouette resembles a stepped pyramid when viewed from certain angles. The geological perspective is powerful, but not total. The archaeological perspective is intriguing, but not proven. Yonaguni remains balanced in that delicate space between the measurable and the mysterious, between the certainty of physics and the lingering question of human presence. There is no definitive answer, only converging lines of possibility like cracks in stone meeting in improbable symmetry. A landscape wiser than memory. Night falls gently over the island. The sea glows with moonlight, silver ripples moving softly, like breath over a sleeping world. The wind settles, the waves whisper. You imagine the monument below not as a ruin, not as a temple, but as a testament to the earth's own artistry, a place where nature in its slow and patient wisdom carved shapes that resemble stories humans might one day tell. Perhaps the monument is only geology, an ancient poem written in stone by earthquake and tide. Perhaps ancient hands once touched the terraces, shaping natural forms for rituals lost to time. Or perhaps the truth lives quietly between both worlds, where the earth and early humanity shaped each other in ways now softened beyond recognition. You breathe softly, letting the stillness settle. The ocean remembers everything, even when it tells nothing. And the stone beneath it waits not for answers, but for the next curious soul to descend into its gentle, enigmatic depths. Carvings, tool marks, and the quiet debate over human hands. The morning begins with a gentle hush as soft clouds drift across the sky in thin, pale veils. The sea reflects them in muted strokes of gray-blue calm as polished stone. You walk along Yonaguni's rocky shore, feeling the cool breeze brush your face. The waves roll in with slow persistence, each one whispering a rhythm older than language. Beneath that quiet surface, the monument sleeps, its terraces, corridors, and massive geometric planes waiting in shadow. But today, you return to one of its most debated aspects, the faint, elusive signs that some have interpreted as markings made not by the earth, but by human hands. Some say there are tool marks, some say carvings, some say illusions, and tonight you go to see them for yourself. A closer. Look at the stone's skin. You descend beneath the water, each movement slow and fluid. The sea swirls around you, cool and protective. As the monument rises from the deep, you glide toward a section divers often mention with curiosity, an edge, a channel, a groove that seems too straight, too clean, too intentional. You run your light across the stone. There it is. A narrow trench carved into the surface, its edges crisp, its path surprisingly straight, extending several meters. You adjust your position. The trench remains consistent, not a random fissure, but a deliberate-looking line. Nearby, smaller grooves seem to run parallel, faint, but present. You move to another area where a long face of stone bears shallow depressions that appear aligned almost like the early stages of chisel work. They are not deep enough to confirm, yet not chaotic enough to dismiss into randomness. Your light catches a flat rectangular panel. Its borders appear unusually sharp as though trimmed. The stone feels smoother than its surroundings, its planar surface strangely uniform. You touch it gently, feeling the cold firmness beneath your gloves. It is impossible to know from texture alone whether humans shaped it or whether the sea polished it into this uncanny smoothness. But the impression lingers. Something about this place feels touched. The suggestion of ancient craftsmanship. You continue drifting across the monument, noticing patterns that stir quiet wonder. Here a long channel that runs perfectly straight for over 10 meters. There a row of small square indentations, spaced as though meant to support wooden beams, though nothing suggests construction. Farther on, a sharp ledge rises with the precision of a cut edge, slanting upward at an angle too consistent to appear accidental. You pause at a formation some divers call the stage. Its surface is astonishingly flat. Its borders rise in a neat rectangular frame. Light dances across the plane in delicate ripples, revealing few imperfections. It resembles a platform more than a rock. The surrounding water hums gently as though carrying the echoes of ancient activity. You know this may be imagination, a response to shape and shadow. Yet in the dim underwater stillness, the possibility of human shaping feels palpable. You drift further and find marks that resemble steps carved into the stone, not the grand terraces, those may be natural, but small steps, foot-width rising one after another with surprising regularity. Are they the work of currents and cracks, or of hands, or of both? The sea gives no answer. Human shaping or natural mimicry? Later, as you sit beneath an overhang on the shore while the tide recedes in soft breaths, you reflect on the theories that attempt to explain these faint but provocative marks. 1. Geological explanation, natural fracture, and erosion patterns. Geologists maintain that the stone's jointing system explains most of the supposed carve marks. Vertical joints create straight cuts. Horizontal bedding planes mimic flattened surfaces. Erosion can sharpen edges and deepen lines. Underwater currents can smooth wide areas until they appear artificially flattened. To them, the marks are not tools, they are stress lines, fractures, and the ocean's patient shaping. This theory is grounded and methodical, but even geologists occasionally admit that some features look unusual. 2. Human modification, hypothesis, enhancement, not construction. Some researchers propose that the monument is largely natural, but ancient people, perhaps during a time when sea levels were lower, may have enhanced parts of it. They suggest that humans might have smoothed walkable surfaces, widened natural channels, deepened lines for drainage or ceremony, chipped away stone to create small platforms, or carved steps into naturally fractured walls. They compare these possibilities to early cultures elsewhere who shaped bedrock for ritual purposes long before they built freestanding architecture. This theory explains why evidence of tools or artifacts is scarce. The work may have been simple, light, and vulnerable to erosion. 3. Lost civilization theory, remnants of an unknown culture. A smaller group entertains a bolder idea that the marks are remnants of a skilled but undocumented coastal society that existed before the end of the last ice age, when much of today's seafloor was dry land. In this view, the monument's smooth platforms, consistent walls, straight grooves, and apparent small steps could be traces of a community that used natural stone as its foundation. But without artifacts, no pottery, no tools, no bones, this theory remains speculation. 4. Illusion and expectation. The mind sees what it seeks. Psychologists remind us that if divers expect to see tool marks, they may interpret ambiguous shapes as intentional. Patterns in nature often mimic human geometry. The mind completes puzzles even when the pieces are random. This is a reminder to hold wonder and skepticism with equal softness. Traces without proof. Despite decades of study, no clear conclusion has formed. The marks are ambiguous, compelling, suggestive, but not decisive. Geological explanations remain strong, but the human modification hypothesis persists because certain lines and surfaces are difficult to dismiss entirely. The stone holds too many near straight edges, too many consistent grooves, too many planar surfaces that tease the imagination, yet no artifact has emerged to confirm human involvement. Not a tool, not a shard, not a single diagnostic remnant of daily life. The evidence is present yet hollow, visible yet inconclusive. You sit with this ambiguity, feeling its strange, quiet beauty. The gentle shadow of possibility night descends over Yonaguni with velvet softness. The ocean glimmers beneath a rising moon. The wind dies to a whisper. You imagine the monument beneath the waves, its grooves, its ledges, its subtle patterns. Perhaps they are nothing more than nature's geometry framed by human longing. Perhaps they are the last fading strokes of a culture, erased by sea level rise. Or perhaps the truth is quieter, subtler nature formed the canvas, and ancient hands traced lightly over it, not enough to leave an unmistakable mark, but enough to stir questions centuries later. Mysteries do not always roar. Sometimes they murmur. Sometimes they rest in small grooves and faint depressions that resemble memories more than evidence. You breathe slowly and watch the sea reflect the moon in trembling silver lines. The stone below slumbers in silence. Ritual spaces or natural terraces, sacred interpretations. Evening returns to Yonaguni with a soft rustle of wind moving through the coastal pines. The sky glows with fading hues of amber and rose slowly, surrendering to the indigo of approaching night. You walk along the rocky shoreline as gentle waves whisper at your feet. The air feels ancient here, as though it has carried the same cool breath for thousands of years. Tonight you descend once more into the deep to explore one of the most thought-provoking aspects of the Yonaguni Monument, the idea that parts of it might once have been ritual spaces, terraces, platforms, or ceremonial grounds shaped or chosen for spiritual purposes. Some see only stone, others see sanctity. And you are here to consider both, wide platforms and silent plazas. As you descend into the calm blue, the water folds around you like a cool, quiet cloak. The deeper you drift, the more the monument reveals itself. Broad platforms arranged in ways that hint at gathering movement or ceremony. You reach a massive terrace that divers call the stage. The place stretches out before you in a wide rectangular plain, smoother than the rugged stone around it. The edges are sharp and surprisingly straight. It feels like a plaza, open, defined, purposeful. You hover above it and imagine stepping onto such a space if it were dry land. The platform could have held dozens of people, perhaps arranged in ritual or community or observance. To your left, another wide area slopes upward at a gentle angle, leading to an elevated platform. The space feels tiered like an amphitheater, carved by the earth or by someone who sought to gather voices, chants, or movements here. You drift upward along the sloping ramp, feeling the architecture of the monument enfold you in a geometry that seems to invite contemplation. Is this simply nature's layering or something more deliberate? A temple that never spoke. As you explore the terraces, you notice that the arrangement feels strangely harmonious. Different levels echo one another in size and shape, as though part of an enormous design. The sense of symmetry is startling, so much so that even seasoned geologists pause when looking at certain formations. You glide toward a raised platform with a flat top. It sits like a dais at one end of the complex, accessible only by a series of steps that appear, at least in this light, too regular to be purely natural. From this vantage point, the surrounding terraces fan outward in elegant layers, reminiscent of ceremonial plazas in ancient Japan, Southeast Asia, and even the Americas. You know these patterns could be coincidental, and yet something deep within you senses structure, purpose, arrangement. Below the platform lies a narrow corridor that opens into a bowl-shaped depression. Some divers call it the sanctuary, though no evidence supports the name. Still, the shape, circular and closed, calm evokes the feeling of a place where rituals might have once taken place, if rituals ever did take place. You hover in the bowl, listening to the hum of the sea. The space feels sacred not because evidence demands it, but because its shape invites stillness. And this is the heart of the wonder. The stone feels like it remembers something. Ritual interpretation versus natural formation. Later you sit on the quiet beach, watching the moon rise as gentle waves lap against the rocks. You think through the theories that attempt to explain the terraces' uncanny order. 1. Geological theory, natural terracing, through sedimentary layers. The simplest explanation is geological. The stone at Yonaguni is sedimentary. It fractures into horizontal layers. Tectonic activity lifts these layers. Waves erode them into wide, flat surfaces. Thus, the plazas could be nothing more than natural terraces, large, yes, unusual in shape, perhaps, but fully explainable through the physics of stone and water. This theory holds strong academic weight. Many terraces worldwide form naturally, even those that seem artificial. Still, certain patterns of symmetry at Yonaguni remain unusually elegant. 2. Modified natural theory. Ritual adaptation of natural forms. Some archaeologists suggest a more nuanced idea that ancient people, when the sea level was lower, used natural terraces for ritual or communal gathering and lightly modified certain areas to enhance their function. This would not require major construction, only smoothing surfaces, widening edges, deepening a platform, carving a short run of steps, trimming a ledge. Such modifications could easily have been eroded by thousands of years underwater. This theory aligns with early ritual practices seen in Japan, Micronesia, and Southeast Asia, where natural stone features were often used for sacred purposes before fully built temples emerged. 3. Cultural interpretation, theory alignment, and symbolic geometry. Some researchers argue that the terrace's shape may have symbolic importance. They note the main platform's orientation, the alignment of certain steps, the circular depression resembling a ceremonial pit, the sequence of levels resembling ascending sacred tiers. However, without carvings, artifacts, or inscriptions, these interpretations remain intuitive not evidential. 4. Speculative theory, remnant of a forgotten coastal culture. More speculative researchers propose that the terraces might reflect the remains of a ritual or civic area belonging to a coastal culture that vanished during the rapid sea level rise around 10,000–8,000 BCE. These theorists argue that the scale suggests community use. The terraces resemble proto-ceremonial structures. No artifacts may remain due to erosion, but without datable materials, this remains hopeful conjecture. 5. Psychological theory, the mind's desire for sacred space. There is also a psychological perspective. Humans are drawn to patterns that evoke meaning. Terraces feel sacred because they resemble places made sacred in other cultures. The mind forms temples where nature forms steps. This theory invites humility and acknowledgement of our desire to find purpose in stone, sacred or coincidental. Despite decades of exploration, the terraces offer no definitive proof of ritual use. No offerings have been found, no altars, no carvings, no preserved signs of habitation. The case remains open, unresolved, suspended between the convincing logic of geology and the compelling suggestion of ceremonial design. The terraces might be natural, might be modified, might be symbolic, might be nothing more than erosion, mimicking intention. The sea offers no confirmation. The stone keeps its silence. Sanctity in the unknown. The night deepens as you sit by the shore. The waves move with slow serenity, glowing faintly in the moonlit dark. You breathe with them, feeling the calm weight of centuries in each inhale. Perhaps the terraces were never sacred spaces. Perhaps their geometry is only nature's quiet craftsmanship. Perhaps you see ritual because humans seek meaning in order. Or perhaps the earth once held a people who gathered on these wide platforms by firelight, who carved small steps into natural stone, who knew this place before the waters rose. You do not decide tonight. You simply listen. Mystery does not demand belief, only presence. And as the moon rises higher, the terraces of Yonaguni remain beneath the waves, sleeping in their ambiguous beauty. The sea that remembers, fossils coral and times long, embrace. A soft morning mist drifts across Yonaguni Island, settling like a silvery veil over the sea. The horizon is calm, drawn in a faint line of pale blue where water meets the quiet sky. The air carries a deep, cool stillness, the kind that makes ancient places feel even older. You walk along the edge of the rocky coastline, listening to the rhythmic hush of waves sliding over the shore. Today's descent is not focused on steps or corridors or terraces. Instead, you dive into the biological story the ocean has written upon the monument fossils, coral growths, and marine life that reveal how long the structure has rested beneath the water, and what clues about its age and history nature may have left behind. For the sea remembers, and sometimes it remembers in stone. Fossils embedded in the monument's body, you slip beneath the surface, the water cool and thick against your skin. As you drift downward, the monument rises in dim blue light. It sits quietly draped in algae coral patches and schools of shimmering fish. But today you focus not on the large architectural shapes, but on the details, on the tiny ancient imprints embedded in the rock. Your light falls across a faint spiral, a fossilized shell pressed into the stone during the Miocene epoch millions of years ago. These fossils scatter across many parts of the monument, silent signatures of the sea's ancient inhabitants. You glide lower and find coral growths anchored along the edges of terraces. Some are young, fragile, branching corals just a few years old, while Others, large and robust, suggest decades of uninterrupted underwater existence. At the base of a massive platform, you see layers of coral encrustation forming thick, uneven patterns. These corals tell a biological story, one of immersion, submersion, and the patient work of marine life slowly claiming the stone as part of its world. The deeper you drift, the clearer it becomes. The monument has been underwater for a very, very long time. Time written in coral and stone. You move slowly along the stone surface, observing how coral and marine life shape soften and sometimes obscure the monument's edges. In places, the coral grows thick and heavy, forming clusters that dig into the rock like slow-moving sculptures. In other places, the stone remains surprisingly bare, as though the currents protect certain areas from biological colonization. You stop at a large terrace where a broad swath of coral fans across the plain like a faded tapestry. Time rests here, layer upon layer. The coral tells stories how long the stone has sat underwater, how currents have shifted, how temperatures have changed, how centuries have passed in the rhythm of tides and seasons. You notice a fossilized mollusk imprint embedded near the edge of a flat surface. Its shape is clear, distinct, formed millions of years before humans walked the earth. The sight fills you with awe. This stone holds memories from deep geological time, from epochs long before any ritual, any story, any civilization. The monument is a place where the very old and the possibly ancient coexist nature's memory, blending with humanity's questions. Dating the monument through nature. Later, as you sit on the warm rocks drying in the soft wind, you consider the various scientific attempts to understand how long Yonaguni has been underwater and whether its biological layers reveal anything definitive. 1. Coral dating evidence of long submersion. Marine biologists have examined coral samples from the monument. Some samples suggest the stone has been submerged for at least 2,000 years, potentially much longer. Coral growth offers a timeline, but it is limited. Coral can die and regrow. Wave action can strip surfaces clean. Earthquakes can change water depth abruptly. Different coral species grow at different rates. Thus, coral provides clues, but not certainty. 2. Fossil evidence, ancient stone, not ancient civilization. The fossils embedded in the monument's rock indicate that the stone itself formed millions of years ago, long before humans existed. But fossils do not reveal whether the stone was carved or shaped in more recent times. They confirm age, but not purpose. 3. Sea level rise geological context. About 12,000 to 10,000 years ago, during the end of the last ice age, sea levels rose dramatically. Large sections of Japan's coastline, along with coastlines around the world, were flooded. If the monument were once above water, it could have been exposed during this earlier era. If people lived along those coastlines, any structures would now lie beneath the sea, but no datable artifacts have been found to confirm this possibility. 4. Biological distribution. An uneven pattern. Some scientists note that coral and marine growth appear uneven across the monument. Some edges are heavily colonized, others are surprisingly bare. Some terraces support dense algae, others remain strangely clean. This distribution could be due to varying currents, recent earthquakes, water chemistry, or ancient human modification influencing surface texture. But no single interpretation fits all observed patterns. 5. Geological stability, uplift and submergence. Yonaguni lies in a tectonically active region where parts of the seafloor are slowly rising, while others may be sinking. Geological upheaval may have exposed submerged and resubmerged parts of the monument multiple times across thousands of years. The biological clues, coral algae fossils, form layers of a story, but not a full account. Nature reveals, but does not confirm. You walk along the beach, the wet sand cool beneath your feet. The evidence gathered from coral and fossils is compelling but not conclusive. Coral shows the monument has been underwater for at least centuries, likely millennia. Fossils show the stone is millions of years old. Uneven biological growth raises questions, but answers none. Nothing definitively supports the idea of human construction. Nothing definitively denies it. Nature has written its memory across Yonaguni, but the script is incomplete, eroded, ambiguous. The sea remembers, but in its own way, not through artifacts, not through inscriptions, not through unmistakable signs of human life, only through layers of coral, through fossils embedded in stone, through remnants of creatures long vanished. Time as an ocean, memory as a tide night, begins its slow descent over Yonaguni. The sky dims into twilight violet. A soft wind sweeps across the island, carrying with it the sound of the distant surf. You sit quietly listening to the murmured rhythm of waves. You imagine the monument below the coral softly glowing under moonlit water, the fossils resting in eternal stillness, the stone breathing with currents. Perhaps the biological record tells only the story of nature. Perhaps it hides a deeper human chapter. Perhaps the monument is nothing more than the earth dreaming through stone. Or perhaps time has softened every mark so thoroughly that only nature's memory remains, and human memory, if it ever existed here, was washed clean long ago. You breathe deeply, feeling the calm weight of time settle around you. The sea holds its memories with gentle but unyielding patience, and it shares only what it chooses. A soft transition drifts through your thoughts, guiding you toward the next part of this underwater enigma, where Yonaguni is compared with other sunken ruins across the world, and new patterns begin to emerge. Submerged worlds, global context of sunken ruins. Evening drifts softly across Yonaguni Island as clouds gather in delicate brushstrokes along the horizon. A pale gold light glimmers over the sea, rippling across the surface, like silk stirred by a gentle hand. The tide moves with a steady, lulling rhythm, as though the ocean itself is breathing slowly into night. You sit on a quiet ridge overlooking the water, the monument hidden beneath the waves. Tonight, your thoughts turn outward to other coasts, other continents, other mysteries lying in the deep. Yonaguni is not alone. Across the world, beneath rivers, bays, and far-reaching seas, structures lie submerged, some undoubted ruins, others natural formations that mimic civilization, still others lost chapters in humanity's memory. Tonight you explore these echoes in the global ocean, comparing, contrasting, and wondering. A world of sunken stories. You imagine yourself drifting not only off Yonaguni, but across oceans and eras. Off the coast of India in the Gulf of Kambhat, sonar scans revealed patterns resembling rectilinear structures. Divers later documented large stone blocks and cultural artifacts dating thousands of years old, findings still debated, still enigmatic. In the Mediterranean, near the ancient city of Pavlopetri, off Greece, a clearly human settlement lies submerged, a network of streets, courtyards, and pottery fragments preserved beneath millennia of waves. Near Japan's own coast at Karama and Chatan, divers have found stone formations showing signs, some clear, some uncertain, of human shaping. And elsewhere in the Caribbean, the Black Sea, Micronesia, and even beneath modern harbors in Europe, archaeologists have uncovered structures swallowed by rising seas long before written records. The world is full of places where land once stretched farther, where human activity left marks on coasts that no longer exist. You realize Yonaguni, mysterious as it is, belongs to a global family of submerged landscapes. But where does it fit? Patterns that repeat across the earth. You close your eyes, letting the ocean breeze cool your skin. Your mind drifts across continents, tracing repeating patterns of stone and sea. In Dwarka, on India's northwest coast, ruins attributed in mythology to Lord Krishna were found beneath the waves' walls, pillars, and artifacts. Their precise age remains contested, but their presence stirs the imagination. In the Black Sea, deep explorations revealed ancient shorelines far below modern water levels, evidence of once inhabited lands suddenly drowned, perhaps inspiring flood myths across the Near East. In the Mediterranean Roman villas, harbors and temples lie underwater due to earthquakes that dropped entire districts beneath the waves in minutes. You picture each submerged site, rectangular rooms, paved streets, carved stones softened by algae, all carrying the same quietness that Yonaguni does. A silence made not by absence, but by time. You imagine ancient coastlines filled with life, suddenly shifted by earthquakes or swallowed by rising seas. Stories erased, leaving only stone outlines and unanswered questions for future generations. The awe strikes you the sea has shaped and reshaped humanity's history so often that Yonaguni's mystery may not be an exception, but part of a much larger global pattern. Where Yonaguni fits in the puzzle. As twilight settles over the island, you consider how scholars relate Yonaguni to these global submerged sites. Their explanations vary, but each offers a lens through which to view the monument's place in the ancient world. 1. Geological analogy. Yonaguni as a natural formation. Among many, some geologists point out that many places with underwater ruins are actually natural formations shaped by tectonic fracture systems, volcanic activity, erosion, wave scouring, sedimentation. For example, Japan's coast has multiple sites like Sengan-ishi, where layered stone forms step-like terraces similar to Yonaguni. Thus, natural mimicry is not unusual. These scientists argue that Yonaguni should be seen within this natural context, a beautiful, intriguing geological phenomenon that resembles architecture but remains fundamentally natural. 2. Anthropological analogy, coastal societies, and submerged ritual sites. Anthropologists note that before the end of the last ice age, coastlines extended much farther outward. Early humans lived along those coasts, fishing, gathering, building small settlements, carving stones. If those coasts were submerged, any evidence of their presence would now lie beneath the sea. Thus, Pavlopetri, Doggerland in northern Europe, parts of Southeast Asia. Black Sea settlements all show that humans lived on coasts, later drowned. Some scholars argue that Yonaguni may fit this pattern, a natural stone foundation adapted by humans, subtly then submerged long ago. 3. Comparative archaeology, similar structures. Across civilizations, researchers exploring similarities note that underwater terraces and stone platforms sometimes resemble Polynesian marae, Japanese Jomon ritual sites, Micronesian stone complexes, Southeast Asian megalithic plazas. These parallels do not prove Yonaguni was ceremonial, but they demonstrate that large, flat, natural platforms were often used as gathering places by ancient peoples. 4. Alternative theories. Proto-civilizations lost to the sea. A smaller but persistent group proposes that global submerged sites may reflect a series of early coastal cultures, loosely connected traditions, or even an early seafaring society lost thousands of years ago in massive sea level rise. Such ideas remain speculative, attractive, evocative, but lacking definitive proof. And yet, they invite contemplation, especially when surveying patterns across continents. A mystery with too many mirrors. You sit on a warm rock as the sky deepens into cobalt. The ocean stretches quietly before you, hiding the monument beneath its gentle waves. Comparisons illuminate possibilities. Parallels offer clues. Patterns inspire hypotheses, but they do not deliver certainty. Some submerged sites are undeniably human-made, some are undeniably natural. Many, like Yonaguni, exist in the wide, quiet space between those worlds. Global analogies help explain how coastlines change, how stone fractures, how civilizations rise and vanish. But none of these broader contexts resolve Yonaguni's core question: is the monument truly a human-altered structure, or simply the Earth's own masterpiece? The world provides many examples of both, and so Yonaguni remains gently balanced between them. No definite resolution emerges. A world beneath a world before night unfurls over Yonaguni. The sea darkens into a vast mirror, holding the faint glow of the moon. You breathe slowly, feeling the cool wind brush against your face. You think of coastlines drowned in ancient waters. You think of settlements preserved by accident. You think of stones shaped by nature that look eerily like human hands. You think of cultures lost of memories, carried through myths of stories, reshaped by time. Perhaps Yonaguni is no different from Pavlopetri or Dwarka or Doggerland, another place where history and geology meet in a quiet, unresolved embrace. Or perhaps it stands alone, a singular blend of chance and symmetry that invites comparisons without truly fitting them. You let the thoughts drift away like foam on the tide. Mysteries connect across oceans, but each one keeps its own center, and the sea, patient and ancient, holds them all without hurry. The debate endures scholars, divers, and the weight of uncertainty. A soft silver dawn spreads across Yonaguni Island, painting the sea with pale streaks of light. The waves glide in gently, almost silently, as if mindful not to disturb the ancient riddles that lie beneath them. You walk along the shoreline, feeling the cool breeze brush against your skin. The air trembles slightly with the distant murmur of the Kuroshio current, a reminder that even calm seas hold deep, restless forces. This morning you turn your attention not to stone or coral or geometry, but to the human struggle surrounding the monument, the long, quiet debate between scientists, historians, divers, and dreamers. For nearly 4 decades, the Yonaguni Monument has inspired arguments as layered as the terraces themselves, disagreements as sharp as its angles, yet as fluid as the tides that wash over it. Tonight, you descend into the heart of that debate. A mystery that divides minds. As you slip beneath the surface, the water enfolds you like a cool blanket. You descend through shifting ribbons of morning light, and the monument rises beneath you, angular, massive, solemn. It waits, as it always does, unchanged, indifferent to human opinion. You drift over a broad terrace. Your fingertips graze its smooth stone. The enormity of the structure presses softly against your thoughts. And here, beneath the waves, you feel the pulse of the debate almost as clearly as the current. Some divers speak passionately of human hands shaping the stone. Others insist the formation is entirely natural. Scholars sit in careful skepticism, weighing evidence on both sides. Geologists point to fracture patterns. Archaeologists search for context. Local people recall legends of lost lands. The monument does nothing to clarify itself. It simply is. You hover there suspended between possibility and skepticism, between the lines of a debate that has endured for decades without resolution. Voices from every shore. You ascend slowly, letting the underwater landscape stretch out before you. The monument reveals its vast geometry, terraces, corridors, platforms, cliffs. You imagine the voices that have spoken in its name. Researchers, marine geologist Masaki Kimura, one of the earliest scientific proponents of human involvement, argue that certain features resembled quarry-mark steps and platforms, too regular to be natural. He mapped structures he interpreted as walls, roads, and a stadium-like formation. His view stirred excitement and skepticism. Other geologists countered that the stone's natural bedding planes and fault lines explained its geometry without invoking human modification. They demonstrated similar formations elsewhere in Japan and along sedimentary coastlines worldwide. Archaeologists. Some archaeologists cited the absence of diagnostic artifacts, pottery shards, tools, carvings, burned layers, or human debris as strong evidence against human construction. Yet they also admitted that severe erosion, earthquakes, and submersion could have erased earlier traces. Divers and explorers. Experienced divers claim the monument's symmetry is simply too striking to be coincidental. They describe right angles that feel too perfect, platforms arranged like plazas, channels that resemble passageways, patterns they cannot reconcile with natural erosion. But divers are also prone to interpretation, shaped by the environment they see what the mind anticipates. Local voices. Islanders share older stories of lands swallowed by the sea of rumblings beneath the waves of ancient settlements lost to storms. Some speak of submerged shrines or sacred places, though no consistent legend refers directly to Yonaguni's terraces. You float beside the monument and feel the astonishment of it all the way. A single underwater structure can invite so many interpretations, each sincere, each incomplete. The main schools of thought. As you emerge from the water and sit on the warm rocks overlooking the sea, you reflect on the primary explanations that shape the long-standing debate. 1. Pure geological formation. This school argues the monument's stone fractures naturally. The angles fit sedimentary joining systems. Regional uplift explains the exposed surfaces. Wave erosion formed steps and terraces. Proponents see Yonaguni as a remarkable example of natural architecture, beautiful, symmetrical, but untouched by human hands. 2. Modified natural theory. This more moderate perspective suggests the base is natural. Ancient people modified certain surfaces, light shaping, left no definitive tool marks. Rituals may have been held on natural platforms. This view acknowledges the compelling geometry while relying on known patterns of early human behavior. 3. Cultural interpretation. View. Some scholars focus less on whether the monument was carved and more on whether ancient people used it. Possibilities include ceremonial terraces, lookout points, gathering spaces, ritual stages. Even if humans did not build the structure, they may have held it sacred. 4. Lost civilization theory. The most speculative view proposes the monument was an entire complex built by an advanced coastal culture, submerged after rapid sea level rise. This idea draws comparisons to global flood myths and submerged ruins but lacks concrete evidence. 5. Psychological and perceptual interpretation. Finally, some scientists remind us of human pattern recognition tendencies. We see faces in cliffs, stairways in natural steps, roads in straight fractures. The mind completes meaning even where none exists. This explanation tempers both excitement and skepticism. A debate without resolution. You rise slowly as the tide brushes your ankles. Decades of research have produced no consensus, no breakthrough artifact, no definitive geological proof, no disqualifying evidence, no narrative that answers all questions. Instead, the monument sits in a calm void between explanations, resisting simple categorization. The debate continues because Yonaguni invites interpretation without confirming it. It offers shape without context, symmetry without inscription, grandeur without identity. The lack of closure is not a failure, only a reminder that not all mysteries were meant to fit neatly into human understanding. The beauty of not knowing. The sun sets softly over Yonaguni. Gold turns to amber. Amber turns to rose. Rose fades into a serene wash of violet blue. You sit quietly on the rocks, the breeze cool and gentle. The monument lies below, steady and inscrutable. Perhaps the debate itself is part of the monument's purpose to make you question, wonder, imagine. Perhaps the stone holds no answers because the answers never existed, only interpretations shaped by human eyes seeking meaning in nature's geometry. Or perhaps the truth lingers just beyond reach, a story softened by earthquakes, drowned by rising seas hidden beneath algae and time. You breathe with the rhythm of the waves. Uncertainty can be peaceful. Mystery can be a kind of truth. Ignorance, when embraced with humility, becomes awe. A monument to mystery. The horizon beyond knowledge night settles over Yonaguni with a gentle, enveloping quiet. The sky becomes a deep indigo dome scattered with stars that shimmer like grains of ancient light. The sea is almost motionless, its surface reflecting the moon in trembling silver strokes. The warm, salt-scented wind moved lazily through the island's grass, whispering in tones that feel both ancient and familiar. You stand once more on the cliff above the water, listening. Below you lies the monument, vast, silent, immovable, resting beneath the soft weight of the Pacific. Over the past 13 chapters, you have followed its terraces, traced its corridors, explored its grooves, stood before its face-like formations, walked its mysterious road, and listened to the science and myth woven into its story. Tonight, you descend into the water one last time, into the quiet heart of a mystery that refuses definition. Meeting the monument in stillness. You slip beneath the surface with slow, steady movements. The water folds around you like a cool, velvety shroud. As you descend through layers of moonlit blue, the monument rises into view, its edges soft in the underwater glow. This time you feel no urgency to analyze or interpret, no determination to classify, no pressure to choose one theory over another. Instead, you approach it like one might approach an ancient forest or a distant mountain, accepting its presence, its age, its mystery. You drift along a massive terrace. The stone feels timeless, patient. You pass through a corridor-like fracture, the angles crisp yet softened by centuries of waves. You glide above the stage-like platform, imagining how it may once have looked in sunlight or how it might have looked if no hands ever touched it. In this stillness, the monument becomes not a puzzle, but a companion, an ancient presence sharing space with you in the quiet dark. Geometry that lives without explanation. As you float gently above the structure, the geometry reveals itself all over again, but in a deeper way. The monument feels less like a collection of shapes and more like a landscape with its own personality, a place shaped by forces immeasurably larger than human time. The steps rise in steady rhythms. The corridors align with uncanny precision. The platforms expand like planes beneath you. The edges remain sharp even in the dim light. In this moment you feel awe, not the awe of fear or confusion, but the awe of recognizing something that does not need to explain itself. The monument stands balanced between worlds, between nature and intention, between knowledge and wonder, between the Earth's memory and humanity's curiosity. You breathe slowly, drifting above its longest terrace, watching as moonlight filters through the water and falls across the stone in quiet, trembling motion. Even if no one built this place, it feels built. Even if no one shaped it, it feels shaped. Even if no one walked these steps, they feel walked. This is the kind of mystery that deepens rather than shrinks the world. The many voices of the monument. Later, sitting on a warm rock by the shore, you reflect on everything you've seen and everything others have argued. Geologists explain the monument through the logic of stone, tectonic uplift, fracture planes, sedimentary layering, wave erosion, earthquake movement. Their explanations are grounded, compelling, and backed by evidence visible all along the Ryukyu coastline. Archaeologists consider possibility but demand proof. No artifacts, no carvings, no cultural layers, no confirming signs of intentional construction. Their skepticism protects truth from imagination. Divers, explorers, and dreamers see patterns that speak of people long gone: plazas, steps, corridors, platforms. Their wonder keeps imagination alive in the face of the unknown. Local legends whisper of lost land, of swallowed coasts, of ancient storms that reshape the world. And somewhere between these perspectives lies a delicate point of balance, one where possibility rests gently beside doubt, and neither has the strength to push the other aside. Every explanation is partial, every theory incomplete, every viewpoint sincere. None settle the question. A mystery that refuses to close. You watch the waves roll in with moonlit stillness. After decades of research and argument, no final answer exists. The monument may be natural, may be modified, may be symbolic, may be geological art, may be a chapter in human history erased by rising seas. No single piece of evidence completes the puzzle. No discovery has revealed the monument's identity. No consensus has formed. It remains precisely what it has always been: a silent shape on the seafloor, holding its meaning just out of reach. Some mysteries remain unresolved, not because the answers are hidden, but because the answers were never singular. Because the truth itself may be layered, fractured, shaped by forces both natural and cultural, just like the stone formations themselves. Yonaguni is one of those mysteries. The quiet beauty of not knowing. The night deepens. The stars shimmer above you. The ocean reflects them in soft, trembling echoes. You inhale the cool air, listening to waves that have carried stories for thousands of years. And now, with the full weight of your journey behind you, you feel something profound. Not knowing can be peaceful. Mystery can be a kind of wisdom. Uncertainty can be calming when approached with humility. Perhaps the monument is entirely natural, nature's own monumental sculpture. Perhaps ancient people touched it, shaping terraces or smoothing surfaces. Perhaps the truth lies in a combination of forces working together across unimaginable time. Or perhaps the stone holds a story deeper than any we have yet imagined, a story we may never recover because time itself has softened its edges, erased its details, and left only the quiet shape of what once was. You breathe in slowly, and out even more slowly. Mysteries like Yonaguni remind you of how vast the past is, how young humanity remains, and how much waits beneath the surface both of the sea and of memory. As you rise and begin to walk along the dark shoreline, you feel the calm weight of the night settle around you. The monument sleeps beneath the waves, ancient and serene. It does not need to be solved. It simply needs to be witnessed. The tide hums softly at your feet, and your journey through the Yonaguni mystery drifts gently, peacefully into the quiet horizon beyond knowledge.